Shopping around for a mid-sized family hatchback has got more and more complicated these days, and now it's got even trickier with Honda's latest take on this, the 10th generation Civic. Now the first thing you'll notice is that it's somewhat bigger than its predecessor. Out has gone the rounded boot, and in its place is a rear end that's a closer rival for something like the Skoda Octavia. Overall, it's longer, lower and wider too, all in a bid to help improve practicality as well as retain good driving dynamics. But is it enough to rival the likes of the Ford Focus, Volkswagen Golf and Skoda Octavia? Now, the engine lineup isn't as vast as some rivals, but then sometimes you don't need to bamboozle customers with choice. In all honesty, there should be a version for pretty much everyone. The entry-level 1 litre petrol pumps out 127 brake horsepower, and it's more than a match for some of its rivals with the same engine capacity. It'll do the 0 to 60 dash in a smidge over 10 seconds and will average around 60 miles per gallon. The model we're driving here is the 1.5 litre VTEC Sport Plus, and this really feels like a step up in performance without going for the full-bodied hot hatch, which is the Type R. That's available in a separate review on Motors.co.uk. Finally, if you're more inclined to opt for diesel, then the 1.6 litre makes sense, as it pumps out just 93 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now, it only has 118 brake horsepower, so performance is more laboured than other options, but drive it carefully and it will return around 80 miles per gallon. Now, the ride is a little on the firm side. Yes, that does mean that it's more capable when being driven at pace around corners, but it will become a little irritating over bumpy roads. On higher spec models there are adaptive dampers, which means you can stiffen and soften the suspension, which does improve the ride quality over bumpy roads. Overall, it's not quite as fun to drive as a Focus or a Golf, but then let's be honest, not many owners will be pushing them as hard as they would if they had the hot hatch Type R. Inside the cabin is fairly minimalist, with a lot of the controls operated via this 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system, which does take a little bit of getting used to. It's standard on all but entry-level S and SE trims, and it's certainly not as intuitive as it should be, with even simple operations like altering the volume more complicated than it needs to be. There are a few examples of penny pinching with hard plastics like here on the steering wheel or down here on the glove box, but in all honesty the same could be said for some of its rivals too. While visibility is good out of the front, out of the back it's slightly different. There's a split in the tailgate and the upper part is quite small, so that makes parking somewhat tricky. It will be helped in part though with a reversing camera, which is standard on SR models and above. There isn't much of an issue when it comes to legroom in the front or back. However, while headroom is good up front, in the back it's slightly more uncomfortable for 6-footers, largely down to that sloping roofline. The boot is a good size and shape and bigger than the likes of the Golf or Focus, and the seat split 60-40. Overall, the Honda Civic is a good alternative to the mainstream bestsellers like the Ford Focus and a Volkswagen Golf. It's a good all-rounder which offers excellent levels of equipment and a good level of practicality. It's just a shame that the infotainment system and some of the cabin plastics are a bit below par, and the headroom in the back isn't as good as some of the competition.